I gotta tell you, it's just the worst to record an entire video for half an hour without sound. But we're getting there. Hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you in my spring color scheme here. We are going to talk today about Raymond. Briefly speaking, I've got a couple of things that I'd like to do, but we're going to stick with the summary here, the recap, the recall recap here. That's what I'd like to focus on. So we had a couple of, we did a whole series on Raymond, about 12 videos here, and we went through sort of the angle from what is a due process hearing, due process name clearing hearing. We talked about that, sort of the Loudermill process. We also talked about the strategy, and the difference in styles and what they were doing versus what I may have done, and, compare and contrast like that. But we have asked for sort of a recap here, and I would like to go over, what happened and the standard again, and sort of just keep all that in mind. But as I was sort of hinting there, the whole point of what was going on was to recall the bad actors. What are we going to call these people? The board members who voted to push Mr. Peterson out of the school district for allegedly discriminatory purposes. And let's just go over, again, the key facts here. Mr. Peterson, teacher, principal, comes back as principal, as I understand, also had been student there for a long time. Apparently, they find out that he is not straight, to put it another way, and they decide to take action against him. And again, the majority of the allegation, as I understand it, is something like this. There is a belief among the majority of board members that, assuming that if Mr. Peterson is gay, that he then must not be safe to be around children. I think that, in a nutshell, is the gravamen of the argument there. And if I'm wrong, anybody would like to correct me, please go ahead and do so. I don't have any other information than that. On their part, the allegation is that there was management problems with Mr. Peterson, and that they brought him in and put him on a PIP, and he failed a performance improvement plan, and he failed to improve his performance, and so therefore the board did not renew his contract. I think that's a fair way to put it. Also, keep in mind, so let's just also, with timeline here, there's an allegation of retaliation. So Mr. Peterson files a discrimination complaint with the State Equal Rights Division. Don't know what's happening with that one. Almost the next day, they put him on administrative leave with pay, and he had remained so up until, as far as I know, he's still on March. He's still on administrative leave. So that is concerning, to say the least. I don't know what else to put it. I mean, basically, the people in Raymond are paying for two principals. And again, it wasn't clear why they waited why they would do that. I guess is the right word. Again, then they had the public hearing, and here we are. Then, after that, there was the public hearing. There was a recall election, and I want to have you understand, especially the international audience, be clear on what a recall is. Okay, a recall is a mechanism, democratic mechanism that we have here, and I think it's a product of the progressive age here, and the progressive movement was particularly virulent in the Midwest here, and less so as you go further out. So one of the things that they had is the direct election of particularly of judges was a big anti-corruption measure, and one of the other. There's a lot, but I think, my guess is in Australia you don't elect judges. Okay, my guess is that I know that in England they do not elect judges, and I sort of am shocked at what kind of control the ministers, the prime ministers, have over the judges and the outcomes. I recall during the Olympics, the sort of cleanup, the pre-Olympic cleanup, there was a lot of talk from ministers that judges should give tougher sentences, and by golly, they did. And these were on active cases that they were actively talking about. That's something that would not happen here. There might be things going on behind the scenes, but and I don't have any evidence of that, but there wouldn't be statements out in public, okay? Now, we have this mechanism where somebody's elected to office. We can get rid of them before the end of their term. How do we do that? The most famous example in Wisconsin, without a doubt, is Scott Walker's recall for Act 10. What happened there? Thanks for asking. Scott Walker, Republican governor, sort of won by some small margin. The point is, was not large. And basically on a plan, on a promise to be bipartisan, whatever the heck that means. I would say within moments he came in there and had a hatchet job on a lot of things, including the unions in the state of Wisconsin. So when we look at the Lavasser hearing that we have, for example, and they're saying that that's at will and so forth, which I disagree with that, but just assuming that it is at will, that whole standard and the just cause provision and everything and the lack of collective bargaining, all that goes back to Act 10. One of the big problems was that, as many people perceived that Scott Walker snuck that in on everybody, that it was sort of contrary to what he pledged to do. Certainly didn't mention anything along those lines, was my recollection. So here's what happened. There's two key takeaways from that, and I think that's very germane to what's going on here. Scott Walker, the original election was mayor of Milwaukee, very suspect from that. And I just want to be clear in terms of race politics here. If somebody is a politician from Milwaukee, they're going to have this taint. Everybody's going to assume they're like black, and that they're going to allow there's going to be a race issue. That's all I'm trying to say. Even Mayor Barrett is totally white. I thought very low of Mayor Barrett, especially when I was a kid. I always thought of him as one of those politicians, when he was a congressman especially, who just couldn't complete a sentence. And it was just fascinating to me how he had no problem getting up, speaking in front of audiences day after day after day, and he could barely complete sentences, especially when people would ask him questions. It was just astonishing. The emperor truly has no clothes, if you know what I mean. Okay. So Scott Walker came by, and all the union guys in particular, but many people were just outraged. Okay. What happened? And the Democratic Party, I think, stabbed everybody, all the union workers in the back on that one. And really, if they helped them, they sort of fake helped them. But ultimately what happened was there was a recall election. Who did they have? Scott Walker versus Tom Barrett. Nearly the identical outcome. It's possible that Scott Walker got more votes the second time than he got the first time. Why? Because people thought that the man should have the opportunity to fill out his term, and that recalling him immediately when it was possible for something that he had ultimately done in the first couple of weeks was not the right thing to do. So what's the standard for recalling somebody in Wisconsin? Pretty simple. You can, first step is you petition for a recall for an elected officer after the first year of their term. So Scott Walker had to be after his first year, then they could recall him. And you have to get at least 25% of the vote in the last gubernatorial election in the district from which the elected official is to be recalled. Okay? So, governor's election, last time, there's going to be statistics on how many people voted. You have to get not 25% of the whole, but just 25% of the people that actually voted. Okay. So, and we know that they basically did that there. How can I put this? That they got slightly more, and they blew past the 25%. But the amount of votes, and this is my understanding, the amount of votes that they got for the petition was very close to the amount of votes that they got afterwards. So let me just pause here. I'm sorry. All right, you never know what you're going to find. Sorry, I was distracted because there was breaking news about somebody filing a complaint about the recall, and boy, I didn't want to go down that hole. So here's what I understand that's reported here, and this is according to Mitch Berman, I believe one of the Raymond residents here, and this is Racine County I says that there's 660 signatures that they got, well above the 497 required. And that's by Heather Asanyabi. Got that information there. Great reporting by her, at least on this issue here. Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Okay, so again, here, and this is going to be a strange fact here. They got 660 votes to trigger the recall election. Okay, now the election happened last Tuesday, maybe even longer. And the side that supported Jeff Peterson did not win. And let's go down those numbers here. Okay. So the people who did win, and this is the person who was recalled, they got 584 votes, roughly speaking. 576 was there, to 485 and to 491. Okay, so they started at 660, but when it actually came time to vote, they got less, 491. And I'm guessing that sort of tracks here with the what happened with Scott Walker as well. But we'll get into that, as narrowly as we can here. Okay, so again, the facts are, to trigger a recall election, you have to go around and gather signatures. And somehow, it's a weird thing, but you say we want a recall. Great. Now you have 60 days to get the signatures. Great. Now there's 31 days to test the signatures. Whatever. Somehow they came up with the number was like 497 was what they needed. That's about 25% of who voted, the actual people who were voting in the government last time. That is basically the same thing that we have here, okay? Now, Raymond apparently has about 2,500 eligible voters and about 1,077 people voted in the election. So roughly 45% right there. So 60% of the people didn't get involved, okay? And you wonder then, because it doesn't seem likely that somebody, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's the key dynamic thing that you have to understand. Once a recall election is triggered, then it's basically an open election, okay? The person who has been recalled can run again. They don't have to. You can have one person run against them. You can have 20 people run against them. Doesn't matter. Normally, you're going to have 1 and 1 to have the best shot of winning, but it all depends. And it all depends about how angry people are. I will say that the two big issues are usually some kind of fiscal mismanagement and possibly some kind of sexual depravity that's leads into usually fiscal mismanagement. Those are usually the two issues that are successful in terms of recall, in my understanding. Okay, so now we're down to 1,077, and we're ultimately getting down to let's on the high end about 500 votes. Okay, that now we're getting down to about 25% of the people there. Okay. It's very possible that many of the people who actually voted were at that Jeff Peterson meeting, okay? So what we're trying to do is gauge how effective they were at getting their message out. So it does seem like, at least after the initial Jeff Peterson hearing, they were able to, at the 660 level, there was a lot of people who said, there's an issue, we want to look into it and get more in there, okay? I do not have any information on what activities that we're doing with politicking in terms of what the anti-Jeff Peterson side versus the pro-Jeff Peterson side we're doing to win hearts and minds here. And that's ultimately what we want to talk about here. And I know anti-Jeff Peterson and pro-Jeff Peterson are too simplistic. I think we went over that before. But again, we're just talking here about how do you go from 660 to 487, and how do you go from 487 to beyond that to win? Okay? And I think there's two things that I'm going to say that are part of the problem. I think, again, number one, it's that concept of give them a chance to fulfill their mandate. Now, here's what happened. One of the people resigned. So that, I think that we're going to use some evidence here to say that I don't think that that's theory fits here. One of the, Gwen Keller, one of the board members, and she was sitting on the extreme right. She resigned. And so her position was up, and then another, I think she was about to be recalled anyway, and she resigned. And then the other board member stayed in. That board member was retained, is I think the verb we use. And then Gwen Keller's, I'm going to say surrogate, or the person, I think there's no doubt about it that these people he was the person, his name is Mike Powers, is the guy who was sort of carrying the torch for Gwen Keller. I think that's fair. Okay. They got, like 100 more votes than the other guys. And you're back down to sort of 25%. Here's what I want to say, okay? I strongly suspect, and I don't have any information at all, but we're just, in terms of what they did, what they didn't do, we're just trying to get to the point of, actually, no, I want to compare one statement that they have. There's a Facebook page out there, and about that focuses on the Raymond School District, okay? And as far as I know, both sides are really posting to that Facebook page. Okay. But on the side that did not win, there was sort of a headline there. My Facebook terminology isn't that great. Sort of along the lines of, we're all stunned in shock and sort of disbelief. And I'm submitting here that may be the reason for the loss here, is two things. Number one is, and what I'm going to call the kook factor, or arguing on your own behalf, the pro se factor, like this, okay? When it's not, Jeff Peterson wasn't running for school board, but I think a lot of people understood that much of the impetus from them was coming from that group, but also from people very pro Jeff Peterson. Okay. Those people were always susceptible to the attack that they were Jeff is a disgruntled employee, and they were just trying to get back at the school board, meaning they're not in it for the kids. Totally open to that attack. Okay, so was almost anybody, but one way you can eliminate that, and the problem is that it's hard to speak on your own behalf sometimes, And we see that in, YouTube all the time. Pro se plaintiffs are always at a disadvantage. A fool, attorney has a fool for a client, yada, yada, yada. Why? Because you not only have huge blind spots, but you assume that the judge knows what you're talking about because you've experienced it. And it's something that almost everybody does. And it makes you a less effective or advocate, and it makes it more difficult for people to understand what it is that you need to do. And what it is that you're coming from, and are you an honest advocate? That's what the issue of you being involved in is. I think everybody sort of instinctively knows that, is to say, well, of course he's going to argue for himself, and he probably, even if it's 5 to 10% in what he would, let's put it another way, we can assume that he's going to make arguments that nobody else would make, and he's not even going to be aware of it, because he's got inside knowledge because it happened to him and he experienced it. That's, I think, the way to say out loud what the problem is with pro se people and why they have such a problem communicating to others on what their issue is. So, man, it took a lot to finally get that out and figure that out. But yeah, I would say that's really the issue, and why you undermine yourself. Okay, so. But the other thing that I want to point out here is, and it's simply this: when you are have starting with 25%, and you want to go to another thing, the big problem that you may have is another level is how many people care about Jeff Peterson. I don't know. But I'm going to guess that the people who are angry and upset about Jeff Peterson, the same basic 25%, we're going to be with them no matter what. Okay? So then if your thing, then it's simply a question of numbers. Do you have the numbers? It doesn't seem like they do. And they might have known that. I mean, a good indication that you didn't have the numbers to begin with is the fact that you didn't win the school board. Now, people may be more motivated now. Hard to tell. But part of the thing is that after there's a recall, there's another election. It's very likely and natural that the focus of that election is the one issue, that recall. Okay? But it doesn't have to be. And I think they're ultimately, Scott Walker in that situation was either to make it an issue on Act 10 and nothing else. So people who were motivated that they didn't like Act 10, meaning they didn't like stripping the state workers of their union rights, for example, those people were motivated and went there. But there wasn't anything really else that was up on the election, such as that they were doing a bad job. Okay? Now, I may be totally wrong about all this, and I'm not here to knock the Raymond people, but I do want to say and here's the issue that I'm going to pose. Okay? Again, going on the Facebook group, somebody says, I'm a grandfather, I'm waiting in line to pick up my kids, and it stinks. It smells like overflowing sewer here. Okay, I don't, maybe that's what happens at that time of year. I don't know. But I think it's clear that we know the pro-Peterson side on Jeff Peterson, but I don't think we knew what their side was on the stinky sewer or the gym or whatever other issues that there may have been. And it brings us to the final fallacy, I think, that we have here that many people come to. And we're just using this as the description, not saying that they did this, because I really like and support all those guys. And the Raymond people have moved the needle. And that's very important. Okay, it's important to say, it's important to acknowledge, but it's glad that it happened. The final thing I want to say here about making coalitions and bringing people together is, I don't believe that they came out in favor, one way or the other, of other core critical issues that could have brought people from the already the, let's just say Republicans and Democrats, okay? The Republican side over to the Jeff Peterson side. And we do know, because there was plenty of, Republicans who were in that group, pro-Peterson Republicans, who were for them, okay? But what other issues that they could have, because they only needed 50 votes. And what could they have done to get those 50 votes? And I'm just wondering, as I often do, if they had an attitude as if we're owed these votes, or what can we do to get these votes? Okay? So, again, a lot of speculation, but those are really my feelings on recall elections and how to communicate effectively in terms of building coalitions. And look, here's the point. There's going to be things that you agree on with everybody, very few. Some things, little things that you will find that you can agree with almost anybody that you meet on. And how you get a coalition together on political issues is to find an issue that you can build together 51% of a constituent group to move that issue forward. That's all it takes. But what you need to accept to get there, that not everybody may be into your issue as much as you are, and that you may have to do some education, negotiation, and let's say, I guess give and take, but negotiation and education to get others to give you and get what you want. So, the world doesn't owe you a democratic change. So just always keep that in mind here when you are moving forward. And if that's a lesson that we can learn from these numbers, that's great. But more power to everybody in Raymond. They're awesome. So stick with us. I'm glad you did. We'll keep you informed. Let's hope this video had sound, because that would be an improvement. So it's easy to get into a total funk when these things don't work. And thanks everybody. I appreciate it.